The other day, I think it was yesterday, I was doing my usual prepping for the show, which is endless, and I came across an article with a fellow named Jim Bridenstine, where he was talking about he's worried that the Speaker and the Republicans will cave on this so-called sequester, and he was quite outspoken and plain-spoken, and I thought extremely impressive. And he's a freshman congressman, Jim Bridenstine. How are you, sir?
I'm good, Mark. Thank you for having me.
Did I pronounce your name correctly?
You know, I was just going to say I am so impressed because I didn't have to tell you, and you pronounced it correctly yesterday, and I'm very impressed.
Well, but phonetically, how else would you pronounce it? I mean, Bridenstine. But anyway, let me ask you this.
Yes, sir.
You defeated a sitting Republican in the primary, didn't you?
I did.
Tell us why you decided to run against that Republican.
Well, sure. And I want to be clear. Congressman John Sullivan is a Republican from the 1st District of Oklahoma, and he has been, since I defeated him in the primary, he has been a supporter of mine. He's made phone calls for me. He's done great work to help me defeat the Democrat. So I don't want to besmirch his service to our nation in any way. But
we all love him.
Okay, sure. Well, here's the thing.
Let me change the question. Hold on. Why did you decide to run? Let me put it that way.
Great question. So in August of 2011, our nation voted to raise the debt limit. And when we voted, and of course I wasn't there yet, but when our nation voted to when our Congress voted to raise the debt limit, they created what was called the Super Committee, which I know you've talked about ad nauseum. Super Committee was 12 members of Congress, 6 from the House and 6 from the Senate, 6 Republicans, 6 Democrats, none from the state of Oklahoma, the state that I'm from. 2 were from the state of Michigan. And this super committee had the full authority to raise taxes and change federal spending without any debates, without any amendments, without any filibuster. There would be an up or down vote on the floor of the House and the floor of the Senate, but there would be no debates, no amendments, and no filibuster. And if this super committee were to fail at cutting $1.2 trillion from the deficit over 10 years, and remember, when they say they're going to cut from the deficit, that means they're going to raise taxes. If they were to fail at cutting $1.2 trillion from the deficit over 10 years, it would trigger what has become now known as the sequester. And I'm a Navy pilot. I flew combat in Iraq and Afghanistan. I until I got sworn in, I was flying counter-drug missions in Central and South America.
God bless you, man.
Well, I appreciate that. And the sequester was unpalatable to me as a conservative. And so what I said is, if you're a member of Congress and you're going to vote for this, then I'm going to challenge you. And I did. And it came up quickly after I said that I'm going to challenge an incumbent Republican. It came up quickly that if I'm going to challenge him, then I also have to challenge the Speaker of the House who put this into place. Now, I want to be clear. I don't fault Speaker Boehner entirely. We have, one of the most aggressive liberal presidents our country has ever known. And Speaker Boehner has been doing the best he can, but that particular policy was, sufficiently egregious in my estimation that it warranted a challenge to an incumbent Republican, and it warranted a challenge to the Speaker of the House. So, what I did was, on the 3rd day of January when we got sworn in, is I followed through on a campaign promise to vote against him. And I did it. Now, here's the issue today that we face, and it's very similar to what we faced in August of 2011. The issue is we have opportunities as a nation. We have opportunities as a nation to control spending. We have leverage. And that leverage comes from things like the debt limit, and it comes from things like the continuing resolution and the sequester. And what we have to do as a nation, what we have to do as a Congress, is we have to say, look, we're going to leverage these opportunities to get controls on spending. And every time we have an opportunity, we need to use it. You're probably aware that 3 weeks ago we raised the debt limit, and I know you're aware because I've heard you talk about it. Mm-hmm. And there were no spending controls put in place when we did that. And now we're coming up on a continuing resolution, and it looks like we're going to have a continuing resolution without any spending controls. And my concern is that the sequester, while painful and ugly, and I campaign saying we're going to unwind it, we have a president that is ideologically committed to raising taxes, period. That's all he wants, is to raise taxes. The Republicans have passed 2 bills to unwind the sequester without raising taxes, but to rebalance the burden across the entire federal budget. that would ease the pain on the Department of Defense. And that's perfectly appropriate. But because we have this president that is so ideologically committed to tax increases, what we need is a Congress that is committed to not raise taxes. And my concern is that once the sequester takes effect, and once people start really screaming for a deal, that deal is going to happen, and it's going to include tax increases. And I think here's one of my biggest concerns, and I've heard this from numerous Republicans, and these are friends of mine. We differ on things philosophically, but one of the challenges Republicans have is that they're worried that if we leverage the debt limit or the continuing resolution for spending controls, they say that the market will decline and that our creditworthiness will once again be downgraded, and that then we'll lose the PR war and ultimately we'll lose in 2014. And what I say is that if we have credibility on these opportunities to control spending and the president knows that we're not going to budge, then we can come to the table with real entitlement reforms, real spending controls. And once that happens, once we get those real entitlement reforms, once those real spending controls go into place, then our creditworthiness will come right back, the stock market will rebound, and our economy will once again grow. We have to get economic growth, but you don't get economic growth by just rolling over and giving the president everything he wants every time, which is usually more taxes, more spending, more borrowing, more printing of money. We're printing $85 billion a month at this point in order to fund these deficits, and this has got to stop.
Damn, you're good. I'm going to tell you something. I don't normally let a politician go on and on, but I was listening to every word. Let me ask you something. When does Coburn retire?
Senator Coburn, I think he's up in 2016, and he said he's not running again.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me say this: you're my candidate. Hold on now. You don't have to accept, but you're my candidate.
I just got sworn in a month and a half ago, Mark.
Well, who cares?
Let's rein it in a little bit. But here's the thing,
you got to understand something. When I hear somebody, and you don't need to answer this, when I hear somebody who is intelligent and has clarity and has the guts to stand up and do the right thing, it's not usual. When I had Marco Rubio on this program several years ago, he was at 5% in the polls, and I endorsed him.
Wow.
Ted Cruz and I bumped into each other. He's an old buddy of mine. He said, "Mark, I'm going to run in the Republican primary. I got to, the lieutenant governor is probably going to jump." And I said, "Ted, you're solid as a rock. I'm going to support you too." And there's several candidates like that. Now, some of them lose, some of them win. But when I hear somebody who's really good and has followed through, and I'm not telling you to say anything because the media will take this out of what I'm trying to say. I just want you to know that what you're saying is not only right, the way you're explaining it is very, very important. So how do you see this happening? The Republicans are already talking about, well, we'll throw a bill to the president, or we'll throw one in the House, the Senate, and of course Reid will kill it. But giving the president flexibility to do what he wants, I'm sitting here thinking, this inside the Beltway stuff, this people don't. You don't give the president all this power unless you already did it through some appropriations bill.
Here's the challenge we have right now as a nation, and it's one of the most frustrating things I've come in contact with in my short month and a half on the job. We have, as a nation now, for 60-plus years, more than that even, Congress has turned over its legislative authority to the executive branch. So we have all of these bureaucrats within the administrative departments of the executive branch that make decisions for my constituents all the time. And everywhere I go, I hear somebody complaining about the EPA or Health and Human Services or the Department of Education or some other bureaucrat in the executive branch. This is not what was intended by the Founding Fathers when they created our Constitution. They wanted Congress to make the laws. They wanted Congress to repeal the laws when they were bad. They didn't want us to create laws that would then give all of this power to the executive branch. And every time we as a Congress continue to turn over power to the executive branch, historically it's been bad. Under this president, it has been exceptionally bad. I have seen the president on TV look into the camera and say, "If Congress won't act, I will." I've heard it again and again. But, I had my first State of the Union address where I actually got to sit in the room when the president gave his address. And it was an honor, and it was humbling, and I thank the people of Oklahoma for giving me that opportunity. But all of that enjoyment ended when the president started speaking. And when you're sitting in that audience, and the president looks at you, and he says, "If Congress doesn't act, I will." It just makes you wonder, what would the founding fathers be doing right now? What would they be saying? This is not what was intended by our Constitution, but this is what we have when we have members of Congress get elected over and over again, who abdicate their legislative authority and turn it over to the executive branch. I got into this race because of the super committee. Again, that was Congress abdicating its legislative authority. We have a super committee. It's the United States Congress. We don't have this 12-member super committee, and certainly the bureaucrats in the executive branch ought not be making decisions, in a legislative manner the way they are. So, believe me, I share your frustration, and we have a challenge. We have the most liberal president in my lifetime, and we have
the most liberal president the most radical president in anybody's lifetime. Now, Congressman, I'm going to have to run, but I want to have you back one day. This is Congressman Jim Bridenstine.
You got it.
Did I get it right?
You absolutely did.
All right, from Tulsa, Oklahoma, our great affiliate there. And, man, you think about what I said, okay?
Yes, sir. Well, I appreciate you so much.
And God bless you. You take care.